Thanks for tuning in for another edition of Live with Lenny. We're now doing the first Thursday of the month. So if you got the memo, you're here. And if not, be sure to tune in next month. First Thursday will be January 6th. So tonight's program is sponsored by Suzuki Marine. Suzuki Marine is now offering a 5-year limited warranty. They are doing some financing stuff. You can contact your local dealer for that. If you're interested in Suzuki, visit fishtalkmag.com. Right on our homepage, you'll see a Suzuki banner right here. And if you click to that, it will bring up all the dealers in the Mid-Atlantic region. And it also has a nifty map here at the bottom. So if you're looking for a service, looking for new repower, make sure you visit this page and check out all the Suzuki dealers in our region. With that, I'd like to bring on our angler-in-chief, Lenny Rudo. Lenny, how you doing?
What's happening, Zach?
Yeah, living the dream.
I heard from an anonymous source that you might have had a pretty good day last weekend.
I did. We had a pretty good day. We got a fish up to 26. It wasn't like gangbusters, but we found them, and it was also my friend took me out the week before, and we found them as well. Middle Bay region. It's good, but you had quite a day yourself.
I did. I had fun. I got into the specs.
That's awesome.
And but oddly, we didn't get a single rockfish. And I have been hearing we've had an awful lot of reader reports that those fish have moved deep. Were you guys in deep water? Because I keep hearing 45, 55 feet of water.
Pretty deep, yeah. We were using 1 to 2 ounce metal to get right down quick, and jigging that metal right off the bottom was doing the trick.
Yeah, that seems to be the deal right now. You gotta get over them. You gotta vertically jig with metal and get all the way down there to the bottom.
Yeah, the problem with those smaller jigs, some smaller fish bite, but using a single hook,
Well, 26 these days, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
no,
there
nice
was nothing wrong with it, but
for sure.
But,
So thanks, Vadim, for taking me out, and love the Key West. It was awesome. So, hey, you got some pretty big news. I think you made some life decisions.
It's like on the one hand, it's tragic and disturbing, and on the other hand, it's really cool. But I don't know, Zach. It's a big deal. It's a big, traumatic.
Well, what is it?
I have put my boat up for sale.
You kidding me?
No, the Glacier Bay is on the market. I put it up for sale. I think it was 5 days ago. There it is, 22 Glacier Bay. It is officially for sale.
Well, I got to tell you, I've had a lot of great experiences. Thank you for all the adventures we've gone on, from the Calvert Cliffs to 30 miles out in the ocean. That's one heck of a boat, and it's very cool. Someone's going to be really happy with this fishing machine,
I hope so. I think so. I mean, I've had it 14 years. I'm going into the 14th year. The first year I got it, I rebuilt it. So I'm working on my 13th season on this boat, and it feels like it's a family member. It really does. It's crazy.
And I've heard you offer some advice. If you're in the market for a new boat, go for it. But if you're not, a solid old hull with repowering, with some new modern engines is really a good way to go. And you did that with the Suzukis on this one, right?
I did. When I got that boat, I put Suzuki 90s on it. That would have been 2008, I believe. Might have been 2009. And they've just been humming away ever since. They are fabulous motors. And I'm so pleased that Suzuki is sponsoring us and advertises in Fish Talk, because I can sit here and honestly tell you, I love the things. I mean, they have given me hours upon hours upon hours of trouble-free time on the water. And they're quiet. You know that. They're super quiet. They make no smoke. They're just beautiful creations. In fact, I have a 25 Suzuki on my crabbing skiff too. And that's just a lovely motor. So I love it.
That's awesome. And we got a great video review on that on our YouTube channel. So check that out if you haven't seen it. And they must be reliable, because you took me out 30 miles in the ocean, to the pots,
Oh, yeah.
14-year-old motors. So they must be reliable. So
the boat's gone farther. It's gone to the Washington. And in, let's see, 13 years of ownership, I think they have about 3,500 hours on them. It's kind of hard to tell because the hour gauges died a while back, but they have literally, I've had 2 problems, and it was the same problem, one with each motor. There was an AIC valve that needed to be replaced about halfway through the engine's lifespan. And that's it. Like, these things have just been magnificent. So how many people can own a boat with twin motors for 13 years and say that? I don't think very many.
Right.
So, and I should add, if anybody's interested in the boat, just go to Fish Talk Mag. There's a listing for it on there. Scroll down a little bit, you'll see it right off the bat. Please don't buy it. Please, no one buy it. No, 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 no.
I offered you installments, but I don't think that's going to fly. Well, so anyway, best of luck with the sale, and I'll miss all of, our fishing adventures, and I look forward to seeing what's next. So, yeah. Well, so what are we talking about tonight? Winter walk-in opportunities in the Chesapeake Bay and Mid-Atlantic region. Is that right?
That's it.
What do you say we go into it? I'll slide behind the curtain here.
Please, let's do it. So I want to tell everybody also, we have an article on 5 winter walk-ins in our current edition, which is currently out on the streets. The article is not up on the website yet. It will be in a couple of weeks. But, wintertime, a lot of folks winterize their boats. Some folks don't have boats. They're always, walking on shore. So we thought it was good timing for this article. This specifies some particular spots. It's really the where to. So we're going to talk more tonight about the how to, about some tactics, about some species. We'll also touch on a little bit of where to. But really what I want to hit on is some tactics and some particular fish you can go after in the winter where you got lots of options for walk-ins. So why don't you go ahead and put up slide number 1, Zach? And let's get a rolling here.
Absolutely.
Slide number 1, I think it was last year, it might have been the year before last. And what you see here is a nice crappie caught on the shoreline. Zach, go ahead and make that big again if you would, because I want to point something out to folks in this picture. If you look at the fish and then look at the rod, you can see this angler has a small bobber on his rod. And I certainly want to say one of the most effective ways to go after crappie, bass, pickerel, lots of fish in the wintertime from the shoreline is a bobber rig. Give yourself, 2-3 feet of line under that bobber, put on a shad dart or a marabou jig, tip it with a minnow, and you got a prime setup right there for a crappie. I like the small minnow for the crappie, bigger minnow for the pickerel and the bass. But why I wanted to make this picture really big is if you look just to the right of the fish, you can see 3 orange dots. I hope everyone can see those 3 orange dots in the trees. And I wanted to point that out because when you're fishing from the shoreline, hey people, bring lots of extra gear. Those are bobbers that are hanging in a tree across the creek from where this gentleman's fishing. And you will end up hooking trees. Don't get frustrated. It's part of the game. You take a cast, you go a little too far, you snag a tree, you break it off. It absolutely will happen. If you're not casting into areas where there are trees, you're probably not casting where the fish are anyway. Where you have an overhanging tree over the water is often a good spot. It's often where you see lots of bobbers dangling. Just part of the game. So, hey, you bring lots of bobbers. But again, bobber rig like this, 2, 3, 4 feet underneath of it, minnow, shad dart, excellent rig. All right, Zach, go ahead and take us to the next slide if you would, please. And in this one, we're going to see another species. Here's a pickerel. This is my lovely wife, Melissa. After we walked in, this was actually Christmas Day that this picture was taken. Beautiful, nice, warm Christmas days. We get some of them these days, right? December, you get some nice warm days. And this one, we walked into Ottawa, the ponds at Ottawa, where you can park and walk in. It's maybe a mile hike to the far pond. You can get to some that are a little closer. And we caught pickerel, lots and lots of pickerel. Now, the really interesting thing here is she does not have a bobber on her rod. She just had a bull minnow on a hook. She was wobbling it across the surface, catching the heck out of fish. My son Max was there. He was doing the same thing, catching the heck out of fish. I had on a bobber, and I got really myopic in my thought. I was just like, oh, bobber rigs, good rigs, always work, right? So I kept throwing the bobber. They caught fish. I wasn't catching nothing. They caught one after the next. Like 10 fish later, I'm like, all right, idiot, get rid of the bobber. Just throw the minnow, wobble it across the surface. And it was just what they wanted that day for whatever reason. So again, I love the bobber rig, great shoreline tactic to set up the bobber with a minnow, but it's worth a try just to cast out the minnow on a bare hook and just wobble that guy across the surface, particularly if you're after pickerel. All right, go ahead and take us to the next one if you would, Zach. In slide number 3 here, what you see is a golden trout. So obviously this was a stock trout. Just below the fish and to the left, you can see a little bobber right there. And trout is a great wintertime target. They'll bite all winter long. You can find them in a lot of areas that are stocked and also in the wild areas. But, the fall stocking, both Maryland and Virginia have some pretty strong fall stocking programs. And while a lot of those fish do get caught up in the ponds that are really close to metro areas, if you drive a half hour, 45 minutes away from a metro area to one of the ponds that's stocked, you're going to be able to catch fish there through much of the winter. Those fish usually don't get caught out for quite a while. So that's a really good option. Now, Zach, can you shrink down that one, please? Make me a little bigger. I want to show everyone something. This is the bobber that Jim's using there. That's Jim Grunau, one of our contributors. This is the bobber. It's kind of a teardrop shape. You can see it's not a regular round bobber, right? There's your regular round. Whoop, go the other way. There's your regular round bobber. Here's your teardrop shape. And what that does is it's really good for the float and fly technique. And that's what Jim was doing. Float and fly. Thank you, Zach. We got a link to the article on Fish Talk Mag all about the float and fly. Explains it in detail. I'll nutshell it for you. Basically, you're using a little bobber like this. It's a teardrop shape, so it gets a wobble and it bounces real easy, and it just gives a little bit of motion. You got a couple feet of line, and then you tie on a fly. Or you tie on a tiny jig, a micro jig, something like a 1/64th of an ounce jig, something really tiny like that. And that little float allows you to present that tiny little bait, which is something that the trout love to eat in the wintertime. So for more on that, go to the link. And Zach, would you take us to the next slide, please? And now we're going to move on from trout and talk about another great wintertime target here, catfish. Wow. Our region has seen, there's no other word for it, an explosion in the catfish population. I mean, just an explosion. I don't believe there's a single tributary to the Chesapeake that you can go to at this point that you're not going to find catfish in. And once you get north of the bridge, you'll find them all through the bay, pretty much everywhere. Really easy fish to catch. All you got to do is take a chunk of fish, stick it on a hook. I like a 10-aught or so circle hook, right? Circle hooks are good for the cats. Throw it out there with some weight, let it sit on bottom, done deal. A lot of guys like to use chicken livers. I've used them alongside cut fish before and found them pretty much interchangeable. They kind of get hit, about equally. But when you can't get fish in the dead of winter, you can always go to the Giant and pick up a jar of chicken livers. So there you go. They don't hold on quite as well when you're casting far, but they hold on surprisingly well. As long as you get the hook through that gristly part in the middle, they tend to stick on there. Some other guys use chicken breast. They do fine with that. We actually had a reader check in with us, I think it was 2 winters ago, to let us know that moldy old cheese was working really well for him too. So my point being, these fish are not incredibly picky about what they want to eat. So you got a lot of options there. As for where to go for them, again, you can go just about anywhere. You're going to find them in any of the tribs. You do want to get upriver a little bit in the saltier tribs. Once you get, say, down to the Patuxent or so, you want to start going upriver to really get the numbers. And of course, the granddaddy of all catfish spots is right in our nation's capital, DC, the Potomac, killer area. Tons and tons and tons of spots, public spots you can go and fish from the shoreline. In fact, we have an article on this too. Zach, can you put up the link, please? There we go. And you'll notice in the title there, it's shoreline fishing for trophy blue catfish in the Potomac. The one I'm holding is not a trophy. It's a good eater fish, right? It's good size take home and fry up. But in the Potomac, you can get some real trophies from the shoreline. We're talking 50, 60, 70-pound fish, maybe even bigger. they're there, and they're available right from the shoreline. That article will tell you, again, the where to, and also how to, in a little more detail, on how to focus specifically on those really big catfish. All right, Zach, let's go to the next slide here. Excuse me.
Absolutely. Hey, well, before we move forward, we had a couple comments. So,
Yeah, pop them on up, man.
all right.
Ah,
So Robert Robinson says, put your chicken livers in stockings and they stay on the hook better. That's an interesting tip.
that's cool. I like it. Thank you, Robert.
Kind of like, putting your razor clams in a little baggie, kind of, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Our friend Grant, he's pretty funny. He thinks he likes fishing for catfish as much as he likes my jokes. So,
Oh, come on, Grant.
so but Letty, we had a ton of reports right this week right in the main stem from the bay, Pools Island, Gunpowder, and Still Pond, just monsters over here. So,
Yeah, and big fish, big
yeah.
fish.
So,
I think that when that still pond fish was like 40 pounds, right?
Oh no, that was Captain Jeff Street. He's been fishing Upper Bay his whole life, and he just got a 43-pound personal best up on the Gunpowder.
That's right. That's right.
Gunpowder, but the Pools Island fish too. So just mega. But before we jump to the next slide, we had a pickerel question from Jay Werner about what size hook do you use for pickerel?
Well, so normally, Jay, I like to use the bobber and jig method. So I'm using a 1/4 ounce bucktail under a relatively large bobber. It might be an 1/8 of an ounce bucktail. Switch that to an 1/8 of an ounce bucktail. So it's a pretty big hook. It's a bucktail hook. Now, in that particular case, in that scenario, when they didn't want the bobber for whatever reason, they just wanted the bare hook. I think those were number 6s or number 8s. They were relatively, or I'm sorry, 6s or 4s. They were relatively small hooks because that's what we had on hand. I really didn't expect to catch them like that. Now, there are occasions when even under the bobber, they seem to want a bare hook more than a bucktail. When that's the scenario, I carry number 1s. I do carry number 1s, and I do use them for that. I like a bigger hook for the pickerel. That small hook, if they suck that minnow all the way in and they get the teeth around the leader, they're kiss them goodbye, So I do like a longer hook with a longer shank for the pickerel in particular.
Lenny, I've been using just the small shad darts, but I feel like they're so small. The pickerel tear them up. You catch 2 or 3 nice fish, they break the hook right off, and they might break off inside of them, and that's not good either. So speaking of mono, we had another question from YouTube from MJ Fishnut. What kind of leader are you using, mono or fluoro, and what pound test?
So when I'm fishing the CCA pickerel tournament and I'm fishing for big fish, right? I'm fishing for big fish more than numbers. I'm using 20-pound fluoro leader. A really big one that fights you for a while, they will occasionally still get through that, but not often. Most of the time you can get them, without a problem with 20-pound fluoro. If I'm fishing purely for numbers, I'm probably dropping back to 15. It's not that pickerel seem to be incredibly leader shy, but that 20 is, that stands out in freshwater in a clear freshwater pond or lake. If you're in tidal, you could probably get away with the 20 a little more often without worrying about it. But honestly, you still get plenty of those, 19, 20, 22 inches on the 20-pound leader. And like I say, they will chew through 15 quickly and 20 eventually. They will chew through it. I should add, every single pickerel I catch, I hold my jig in my left hand, take my right hand, I grab it right at the knot, and I slide my hand up that leader. If I feel any nick at all, I chop it off and retie. They braid that line, and that might be fine for a fish or two, especially in the 20, 22-inch class. But when you get the 26-incher on the hook, you do not want that leader to be damaged at all. You want it to be right. So always, after a pickerel, slide your finger up that leader, feel it. You feel any chafing, chop it off, tie it fresh.
Cool. So Grant asked us a question also about pickerel. A buddy of his was using topwater for pickerel the other day. He told him he was crazy, and he claimed he was crazy. So who's right?
Well, Grant, he was crazy, but since I know you, I can say he was also correct. No, seriously. I've certainly never caught them on topwater. I've never thought of topwater as a pickerel thing. I'm sure that if you throw a topwater all the time, eventually you're going to catch a pickerel. There may well be some guys out there who use it all the time who will disagree with me.
Eric Packard claims spring and fall topwater is fun.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Eric's crazy too.
He is. Well, you know, that the tactic you had earlier with the minnow, I mean, that's kind of a live bait topwater tactic. So.
That was right on the surface. They were not sinking. They were right along the surface. And that was in December. Now, again, it was a spectacularly warm December day. Maybe that, those ponds heated up enough. Those are real shallow ponds. I mean, most of them are like 2, maybe 3 feet deep in some spots. And they're filled with weed growth. So I suspect that surface water probably warms quickly. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But yeah, those minnow were right up top.
Gotcha. Well, are you ready for the next slide?
Yes, sir. Bring it on.
Right, and just a reminder to everyone watching out there, put up your questions and we'll get to them as we can. So thanks so much for all the great questions already.
Oh, who is that character? He looks kind of familiar, Zach.
I think I taught him a thing or two about fishing.
Okay.
I'll tell you what.
Mr. Ditmar's there.
That's my dad. He taught me everything I know, and Lenny added a few things too. But growing up, I gotta say, my dad had a yellow perch stuffed on the wall, and all my friends would go like, "Why is there a 15-inch yellow perch hanging on the wall? Most people have barracudas and marlins," and I was like, well, if you're a panfish lover like my dad, that's a trophy yellow perch.
Right.
I've never caught one that big. I mean, it's a monster. I don't even know what the length is. So anyway.
And he's got right there a beautiful stringer of yellow perch, right? And that happens to be a prime winter target in this region from the shoreline. So, Zach, when I was a kid, we didn't even start fishing for yellow perch until mid to late February. We'd start to look for the holes in the pre-spawn areas downriver of the spawning zone. You didn't see them in the spawning zone until mid-March, sometimes April. That has changed. These days, the yellow perch will travel farther up towards the spawning zones much earlier than they did, and they'll be in those pre-spawn holes. They may move in December. They certainly are in there in January, no question about it. These fish are awesome to eat. They're plentiful. You don't have to worry so much about, dinging the population. They're usually willing biters. In the tidal creeks, you really want to be fishing for them in the holes and the channels, the deeper areas during the outgoing tide or low tide. When the tide comes up, they scatter out. Sometimes you can get them around the edges, the periphery of the holes, but it gets a lot tougher. So if you want to target the yellow perch, it's a good idea to kind of pay attention to what the tides are doing. Now, they're also in several of the freshwater ponds and lakes around. You can fish for them. Obviously, the tide has no effect. But there were a couple things that I wanted to point out about going for perch from the shore in the winter. And the most important is, number one, bring your minnow. Get your minnow bucket, bring your minnow. You can catch them on darts and tube jigs in the dead of winter. And I guarantee you, if you're standing there in one spot casting and you catch 5, if you had minnow, you probably would have caught 15. They just react a whole lot better to minnow in the dead of winter. I wouldn't say that all times a year, but in the dead of winter for sure. Now, one really important thing about yellow perch, they love a big wintertime meal, okay? When you're fishing for them in the middle of the winter, don't shy away from that bull minnow that's this big. Get the biggest minnow in the bucket and send him out there. It'll shock you how small a yellow perch will eat that big old bull minnow. Sometimes the bobber works well for the yellow perch. Not often. I often find that it's much better to put that minnow on the bottom. You can either do a straight hook with a split shot or two above it. How much weight you need depends on the current in the area you're fishing and how deep it is. But in some areas like Deep Creek Lake, where of course there is no current, assuming there's no ice on the surface of the water, you can put on a single split shot, pitch a minnow out there into 30 feet of water on a sheer drop off and just let it sink down, and that's all it takes to do the trick. Generally speaking, you want to use the minimum amount of weight necessary to hold bottom. In a stronger current, somewhere like say the Tuckahoe, you may want to get a bottom rig, put on a 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce of weight, and put minnow on the top and the bottom hooks, pitch them out there, let them sit on bottom. And I think we have another link here, don't we, Zach? There it is. We have an entire article dedicated to finding these perch. So again, you can go to Fish Talk Mag, hit this link, take it there, and you can get a lot more details on the perch in specific. But this is going to dovetail into the next slide here, people, okay? Because one of the things I like to do when I'm fishing for yellow perch from the shoreline is fish multiple rods, right? I'll throw one out on a bobber, I'll throw one out on the bottom, and I'll see what works. I might throw out one on a bobber and take a shad dart and put a minnow on it and cast and retrieve it along the bottom, and I'll see what works. So go ahead and put up this next slide, Zach. This slide was actually taken in the oh, I skipped a slide. Gosh darn it. All right, we're going to go ahead to that slide in a sec. Totally different reason for this slide. I missed one. So this slide I put in here because I just wanted to show the bridge. Anytime you're fishing from the shoreline, bridges are hotspots. They tend to be built where the land is close, so you're funneling current, even if it's just wind-driven current on a lake, whatever. And generally speaking, as you have a pinch in the shoreline, you often also have a deep channel going right underneath of that bridge. So bridges, always good, and that goes across the board. I don't know where this one is. This was a reader photo that was sent in, but it reminds me an awful lot of the bridge at Tuckahoe State Park, where the pond empties in, or I'm sorry, the river feeds the pond, and you can go to that pond, and often you'll catch 3, 4, 5 fish there, and then you can walk the shoreline all the way around to the side, and maybe catch 3, 4 more fish doing that whole shoreline. Like they stack right there. So bridges, 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 bridges. All right. Sorry about
question.
What's that?
How about a question about perch real quick?
Okay, hit it.
Is that all right?
Yep.
All right. How far up in the creeks will perch go? I'm sorry, that reads kind of funny. How far up in the creeks will perch go to spawn?
Oh, so all the way up to the fall line. Now it depends on the river or the creek. Some don't really have a visible fall line. Some are dammed. I know you're up there up north, and so in your neck of the woods, you're probably fishing the Susquehanna, and obviously that's capped off with a dam, right? You're not going any farther than Conowingo, but you still get a ton of perch moving up there. Get them in the Northeast River too, and they'll go all the way up. Now that will happen a little later, right? And I can't say when it's going to happen because it all depends on the temperatures. But anywhere from late February to mid-March, the perch will go all the way up into the freshest headwaters, and you'll catch them there. And often, there'll be countless fish in an area where you could practically jump across the river. Certainly could cast across it. So they'll go all the way up there. Now, December, January, you want to be a little farther down. You're looking for some deeper holes, right? If you're all the way up at the headwaters of the bay at the Susquehanna, that's going to be really deep. But, most of the tribs, you're talking, 8, 10, 12 feet, as opposed to the 4, 5, 6 feet that's around it, is going to be a good kind of area. Holes that drop to 20 are really, really good. I always like to use the example of Nanjemoy Creek off the Potomac. It's just a classic example because the vast majority of that creek, you go everywhere, it's 4 or 5 feet, maybe 6, 8 feet. And then there are a couple of holes that drop down to 18, 20, 22. And if you get there to those holes before the perch move out and get ready to spawn, often that happens in, early February, January into early February. You can just wail on them. I mean, they're loaded in there. They got to be fin to fin.
All right, thanks.
All right, we got any more perch questions? Or we go to the next slide there? Because I jumped slides. I confused myself on the whole slide thing. I glanced at my other computer screen, and I completely missed the bass by the bridge, which is important.
I'm looking at a walk-in photo next. Are we on the same page?
Yes.
All right, here we go.
Thank you. Yeah, it was all my error. So that's actually was taken last spring, a little later in the spring. Can't remember if it was, I think it was April. And that's Eric. Me and Eric were going shad fishing. So not really related to a winter walk-in, but I wanted to put up this picture for one simple reason. You can see in his hand there, he's got not one, not two, but 3 fishing rods. And that's what I was starting to get to earlier when I said if I'm perch fishing, I might throw out one on the bottom and one on a bobber or one on a shad dart. Now, depending on where you live, you may be limited in the number. Like in the state of Maryland, you're limited to 3 rods to actively fish at any given time. You can have a 4th rod if you're not fishing with it, but you can only fish 3 at a time. If you're doing a winter walk-in, I say bring 3 rods. I do. And let's say you're, in a tidal creek. Heck, you can throw out a big chunk of fish on bottom to see if you can get a catfish. Lean that rod up. Don't have to worry about it until or unless it gets a bite. You can throw out a bobber with a minnow and try and get some crappie. You can take a shad dart and a minnow and work it across the bottom. It just gives you lots and lots and lots of different options. And so multiple rods. If I'm doing a walk-in, I feel kind of funny sometimes, because I'm hauling all these rods and all this stuff. But the truth of the matter is, if you want to catch fish and want to have a good time, bring multiple rods. I say haul 3 on any of these trips. Oh, there goes my phone. I'll just pull the cord on that. Sorry about that. All right. I think we can go ahead to the next slide there. Now, this is an interesting one. This is an interesting one. Go ahead and make that big, would you, Zach, please? So this is a bridge over Loch Raven here. And I want everyone to look on the downside of the bridge there. You see all these weird little squares poking out, right? Those are actually fishing platforms that the powers that be were kind enough to build on this bridge. There aren't a ton of these around, but you will find them. You find catwalks sometimes. There was a great catwalk at Lake Anna on Dike 3, which unfortunately I heard that they had to knock it down because it was getting unstable, and instead of fixing it, they nixed it. That's a shame. But there are several different areas where you'll find these bridges with either catwalks or these platforms that come out. And when I was a kid, I grew up in Baltimore. I used to go here all the time. This was like one of my main winter, late fall, winter, early spring spots. And crappie would just pile up around the bridge pilings. But here's a conundrum, right? You're out on this platform that sticks out, and the bridge piling is behind you. It's a good 15, 20 yards back the other way. How do you get to it? Well, you use a technique that I call slingshotting. And Zach, can you go ahead and put up the link for that? Because we have an article that describes in detail how to go slingshotting for crappie in the wintertime. Of course, that's assuming it doesn't get so cold, that the lake's frozen over yet. But anyway, what you do in a nutshell is you cast straight out away from the bridge. Not hard, just a gentle cast. And then when that rig gets about 18, 20 yards away, you grab the line and stop it, and it will pendulum back. And when it's penduluming back, you just hold that line, hold that line, hold that line, and when it sails towards going under the bridge, you let go, and it'll keep going. And you can slingshot it underneath of the bridge, and you can get your rig right next to those pilings. Then you want to count down however long it takes to get to the fish. You don't really know until you experiment. Maybe the first time try 5 seconds, next time 10, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until you get a bite. Give it that little bit of sink time, and then close the bail. And then it will slowly swing back out until it's underneath the platform again. But you get that, it's almost like a trolling effect, right? As the minnow are swinging back towards you under the bridge, that you get with that slingshotting tactic. And it works really, really, really good. Anytime you're fishing from a bridge, and this goes any time of year, really. Anytime you're fishing from a bridge, on a catwalk or on a platform, if you can't get down right next to the pilings and you think there's probably fish next to the piling, use that technique. Just cast it straight out, stop it, let it swing, let go, and it'll shoot right on back underneath. All right. Let's see. Let's go ahead to the next slide. And this is one more important tactic for shoreline fishing. I guess it's gear as much as tactic. You can see there he's wearing waders. Now, waders are not incredibly comfortable. I hate walking in them, frankly. But if you're going shoreline fishing, you really might want to consider wearing waders. This is assuming that you have some good warm waders that are, totally watertight for wintertime fishing. But what it allows you to do, you can see, we talked earlier about the bobbers getting stuck in the tree limbs. You can see this guy's got brush all over the place. If he was limited to just the beaten path on the shoreline, he would only have one spot to fish. But he's got waders on. So he can get off the shoreline and he can walk out far enough that he can cast, even though trees are cluttering up the entire shoreline. Now, lots and lots and lots of shoreline fishing spots in the region. They're public areas, obviously. And most of the time there will be a path and a spot you can fish. And then, often there's a whole lot of shoreline you really can't fish just because of all the work. And then maybe if you go down the path, there's another spot you can fish. And then you go down the path a little more and there's another spot you can fish. But there's tons of shoreline in between that you really just can't get to. And often if it's a beautiful day and there are lots of people out, well, half of those accessible spots are going to be taken, right? There'll be someone there. So waders can really be a serious tool that gives you a leg up, particularly on really nice days when public access points are going to be crowded, because it allows you to get off the shoreline a little bit and go to these spots where other people just can't fish. Now, you got to be careful. Remember, this is wintertime. If you take a fall in waders and they fill up with water, it can be really dangerous. If you're in a high current area and you fall down, it can be really dangerous. So you want to be careful, use all appropriate caution for wintertime fishing. But they give you a real advantage. In fact, I think, Zach, I'm trying to remember if you were there. I think you might have been there. One of the days we were fishing one of the ponds for white perch, and there was a guy who had on waders, and he could get where nobody else could get, and he was out catching everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just got my new waders in the mail.
Nice.
I'll tell you what, Lenny, I actually also ordered a dry top to go over top.
Ooh.
That way, if you do fall in, it's sort of it's a tight belt, creates an air pocket. It's got sealed wrist and neck gasket, so it's just added another element of safety. So
nice, I like it. I might have to check that out. I don't have that.
Yeah, it didn't fit where I have to get another one, but I'm gonna get one. Because I do a lot of solo wintertime fishing, and
Yeah.
I like fishing. I want to fish for a long time.
Yeah, who wants to stop in the winter, right?
Absolutely. Well, so our friend Eric Packard asked, how stealthy should you be when fishing low water streams and ponds? And I think he was referring to when wade fishing.
I think that's a setup because he knows. Eric, to be stealthy, right? Some species, trout are a great example, and I've seen it with bass too. They will actually get scared off by your footsteps, the vibrations of your footsteps along the bank. Like even when you're in a spot where they can't see you yet, but if you're just kind of tromping along, you'll spook them. You'll see them shoot off. Yeah, low water streams, ponds, shorelines, you got to be stealthy. You really do. You want to watch where the sun is to make sure that you don't cast your shadow across the water, because that's another tip off. I can't swear to this, but because I don't know personally, but I have read before, and it makes sense that the fish are really sketchy on shadows, particularly because when they're young, birds come down and pick them off, and like the last minute warning that they're about to get eaten is the shadow suddenly coming across the water. Again, I can't swear that's true, but I think it is. It makes sense, and they certainly that is something that'll scare them off. So Eric, what's he say here?
He says, well, yeah, I just got back from fishing a pond and I spooked him. But still called fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, you can spook them. All right, our next slide here goes into something really near and dear to my heart. You ready to pop it up there, Zach?
Here it comes.
This is a special one. So this is one of my sons. This is Max, who is now 21 years old. In this picture, he was either 3 or 4. You can see he caught a nice yellow perch. You can see he's dressed for winter. This is the middle of winter. And, when I was a dad, I mean, a fishing dad wants to take his kids fishing, right? And in the middle of the winter, you kind of, it almost feels like you're defeated. Like, where are you going to go? What if it rains, right? Even if it's warm out, you can't take a kid out in the middle of December, January if it's going to rain. And there's one spot that I know of where you absolutely positively can take little kids fishing in any weather. And this spot is Martineck State Park. It is near Denton, Maryland. It's in Denton. Zach, would you go ahead to the next slide, please? And we'll take a closer look at this spot. And I'll tell you right now, I understand that some people are going to be like, oh no, he's giving away the spot. Look, there are moms and dads out there who want to take their kids fishing in the middle of the winter and they got no options. If you're an adult and you can go catch fish, go wherever you want. You can go here. But families need to know about this place. We have one slight problem in that the place that I want to show is actually behind the Suzuki logo in the back. Can we change this somehow, Zach? Can we maybe make it just a little bit smaller or something? The X is the parking lot, right? That's the parking lot. There's a boat. Oh, thank you. There's a boat ramp there. You can go to the boat ramp and launch a boat and go downstream and catch a million fish. But if you go to the parking lot where the X is, there's a bathhouse. There's bathrooms directly below the X, a little bit to the right. And behind them, there's a path. You see this arrow. Follow the path along that arrow. And then at the exclamation point in the lower right, you see this little rectangular box hidden by the trees. That is a pavilion with a railing around it. And it sits right at a 20-foot hole. And you can go there and cast out minnow on a bottom rig, cut bait, whatever, and catch tons and tons of yellow perch and catfish consistently right through the winter. And the beauty of it is it's got a roof over it. It's almost always sheltered from the wind because the shoreline really kind of comes down really quick there. And it is just, I don't even know how many times I took my kids there when they were between the ages of like 3 and 7 or 8, when they really couldn't handle the winter exposure thing. But I wanted to take them fishing. And this is where we used to go all the time. It's just a fabulous spot to take kids in the winter. So again, if you love this spot and you're angry that I'm sorry that I'm telling everybody about it, sorry about that. But family anglers who want to take kids fishing, they need to know about this spot. And you know what? If the pavilion's full of kids when you get there and you don't have kids and you want to fish, you can just walk along the shoreline. There's tons of shoreline fishing access here too. It's not like you're not going to be able to get a spot. But the kids can be under that roof. They got a railing around them. There's open shoreline behind it that they can run around on if they get bored. It's just a magnificent spot for families to take the kids in the wintertime. And so I want the family anglers out there to know about this. Martineck State Park near Denton. And that's kind of the culmination of what I got for shoreline fishing. Zach, we have any questions popping up?
We've got most along the way, but I do see one here. So pull this down. So we got Doug asked, what type of rod do you like to use for perch?
Well, the first thing I would say is, as long as it's not real heavy, you can use just about anything. Now, I like to use like a 6-foot St. Croix, something along those lines. Something light, 8-pound test, maybe 10-pound test. I generally fish braid on a lot of my rigs, so I might have like 12-pound braid, which is the diameter of, about 6-pound test. But it really, I think a lot of people put too much focus on specifics when it comes to rod and reels. If you hold it in your hand and you like it, I say go for it, Now, I do think you should always put the reel on the rod before you make a choice. Obviously, a combo, it's already there. But if you're buying a reel and a rod separate, which normally, you kind of get better quality that way. Not always, but normally. You want to put the reel on the rod and hold it in your hand before you make any solid choices. And of course, if you like to fish perch with a bottom rig, there's nothing wrong with 12-pound test mono and a 6.6 or a 7-foot rod that's a little heavier. That's just fine. If you want to throw light jigs for them, if you want to do the shad dart with a minnow on it, then you do want to scale down. You want to make sure you're using that lighter line, something more sensitive, something that allows you to use, very little weight without any problems.
Awesome. All right. Will Kenny asks, how old do kids have to be to need a fishing license?
Well, when you hit 16, that's the magic number. You got to get that fishing license. I think when you hit 65, you don't have to get it anymore. Someone can correct me on.
I think that's right.
Yeah. I was gonna say someone can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I think once you hit senior citizen status, you no longer have to get a fishing license.
Of course, if you have a boat and you want to take people, it's best you should get the boat license to cover anyone on it.
Yeah, and when you get the boat license, not only do you cover everyone on the boat, that also gets you a regular license, your personal license. You put that in your wallet, you can get on another boat that doesn't have a license or fish the shoreline, and you're still covered. You're still good. Of course, I guess it should probably be mentioned that many of these areas, they kind of, they might be tidal in one spot, and then you get in the car and you drive 5 minutes to hit the same river in a different spot, and it might be non-tidal. So you want to check on that. And then actually, Will, I'm so glad you started this conversation because I forgot to mention one thing I meant to. Both the Maryland DNR and the Virginia, I'm blanking on the freshwater, it's not VMRC because that's saltwater. Both Maryland and Virginia, both states' freshwater regulatory commissions, how about that, have excellent maps online that show you gazillions of access points, more than you could ever search out in a lifetime, So if you just Google, Maryland DNR fishing access map or Virginia fishing access map, you'll get to these maps. And they generally give you a really good handle on where you can go with public access, which spots have parking, which have restrooms, which don't, that kind of thing. They're not always as detailed as like what I was just talking about with Martinet, where it's very specific facilities that are there. But they give you a really good idea of the spots you can go walk in at. I mentioned Ottawa earlier, where you can park and walk into multiple ponds. And if you go to the DNR map, you'll find it on there. There's also access points. Oh, which river is that? Is it the Wacomico? I don't think it. Marshy Hope. I think it's the Marshy Hope. There's also access there, and all those points are listed out on these maps that the DNRs have. So it's wonderful, wonderful resource that we didn't have when I was a kid. When I was a kid, we used to literally fold out paper maps on the floor and puzzle over them for hours at a time to try and figure out where we would and would not get parking tickets and where we would and would not catch fish. So, today's anglers, you got a leg up on that one.
Hey, our friend and fellow Fish Talk contributor, John Vale, actually let us know that seniors do actually need a license, but it is only $5 a year. That is I got the manual out here. That is that $5 license for 65 and older includes title, non-title, and also a trout stamp. But you do need the $5 license as a senior.
Well, that is interesting. Thanks for chiming in there, John. I was unaware of that. In a few years, I'll have to pay more close attention to it.
And our friend Kevin has some question about shad darts. Do you have any color or size recommendations for shad darts for pickerel or yellow perch?
I do. All right, I'm gonna do a 5-second disappearing act to lean over and get my tackle box. Okay. Coming right back. Come all the way. All right. This is my fresh entitled pickerel perch kind of tackle box right here. This is where I just grabbed this out of it. For pickerel, this is that little bucktail I was talking about. I like that guy. Look at how long that shank is. That'll usually Not always. Usually keep the pickerel's teeth off of the line. So that's the guy I like right there. By the way, it's an old historical rule. If you're fishing for pickerel, white is always good. There are times when chartreuse is really good, yellow is really good, pink can be hot sometimes, but white is kind of like always a winner. Now, if you want to go with the dart, you can use one like this, which is kind of, much bigger, has a heavy head, but still has that big gap. That's the critical thing. And I don't mean the hook gap. I mean the gap between the eye where you tie on the line and the tip of the point. So you keep it away from the fish's teeth. Now, for the perch, let's see, where's a good perch one? Perch ones are smaller, which means that as I near the point where I get the senior citizen fishing license discount, I have to grab these guys. Let's see. So little darts like this guy are the ones that I like. Now, there are all kinds of color patterns. I mean, a gazillion of them that you can choose from, that's funny. So here's one that's more of a jig style, but got a very different color pattern. All these things are, highly effective. You kind of never know what color is going to be best on any given day. So you always want to carry a nice selection and cycle through them. If you're not catching fish, if you're catching fish, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if you're not catching fish, start changing around the color patterns. I just want to whip out this one real quick too. Not a shad dart, but a road runner. Basically like a shad dart with marabou and a blade. This is a fabulous perch and pickerel lure. Put a bull minnow on the back for the pickerel. You can cast it just as is for the perch, or you can also get them. Look, I forgot to cut the last little bit of line off of there. You can also get them with a little tail like this. That right there is a perch killer. They love that. Now, I'll reserve that for really warm days, for days when the bite is really strong and the fish are active and I'm not using the minnow. I might throw it some days for the pickerel. The pickerel will hit it all winter long, but the perch get a little more selective on the minnow versus the lure when the water's really cold. So if I'm perch fishing, I'm reserving it. If I'm pickerel fishing, I'll throw that any time. And a lot of the time when I'm fishing minnow for pickerel, if I'm not getting bit, that's my go-to. I immediately reach for that. There are days, I have no idea why this is, but it's a fact. If someone knows the answer, please tell me. There are days when pickerel will completely ignore the minnow. They just totally blow them off. They don't get bit. But those road runners with the little blade and sometimes the inline spinners and MEPs, things like that, they attack them with abandon. It's weird, but they're fish. I can't tell you why. I have no idea what they're doing, what they're thinking. But there are days where that's the case, and the minnow just go untouched. And the little blade baits like that just get slammed. So go figure.
Cool. We got a YouTube question here, and this is something I know you don't know anything about, but I'm going to put it up anyway. The Chesapeake Hunter wants to go pickerel fishing in Salisbury. Where is a good place?
You have a ton of options. Here's what I'm going to say. Zach, how fast can you pull another link up?
Pretty fast.
Can we get the link to the mill pond article?
Sure, let me know.
You know which one I'm talking about? We have an article which is on Fish Talk, which covers on the website, which covers not only the Salisbury mill ponds, but all the Eastern Shore mill ponds. If you're in Salisbury, you're near a ton of really good mill ponds. You can go to Johnson's, you can go to Leonard's. You can go to Shoemaker, which for a kayak guy has an added attraction in that lake doesn't have a boat ramp. Shoemaker there is a spot on the far side of the lake where you can pull over on the side of the road. It's legal to park there. And there's a rock path that they made that you can use to get down to the water, but it's not a boat ramp. I've actually launched my boat there before because two people can carry it in. You can launch like a 10-foot John boat, something real small. Okay, there's the link to the mill ponds article. But you can also, if you have a kayak, you can launch it right there. And you have a lot less competition in Shoemaker because there's no boat ramp, right? And you kind of often you go there like on a Saturday, you might see one other boat. I I don't think I've ever seen two other boats there. I could be mistaken, but very little competition. Plug full of pickerel. You're gonna catch a ton, just a ton. Now, I usually fish off a boat on a trailer. I trailer it in. I launch at Johnson's. That's like one of my favorite places for them. I used to go to Leonard's more often. I haven't in a while. They're within spitting distance of each other. You can go into the Wacomico River there, and you'll have a good shot at pickerel and a better shot at decent perch. One of the downsides to the most of the mill ponds is the perch tend to be smaller than the ones you'll catch in the tidal rivers. So if you go, below the dam in the Wacomico, there's public access here right in Salisbury. I don't remember exactly how you get there, but if you pull up that DNR map, you'll find it. And right there in Salisbury in the Wacomico, there's some really good perch fishing along with the pickerel. Another one, I'm going to throw one more at you. This one's really good. You can go launch at Snow Hill and go up the Pocomoke. Now, that's a little bit of a drive from Salisbury. You're about, what's that, about 20 minutes away, I guess?
About a little more, maybe.
And if you have a kayak, you can launch above the little bridge. Zach, do you know what that access point is called?
It's the Pocomoke River Company. It's a little kayak shop right there.
Cool. So you can put in right there, or you can put in at the boat launch ramp. On a low tide in a kayak, you can get under the bridge. On a higher tide, you actually have to have the bridge open. But in any case, go upriver. My gosh, you go a couple hundred yards, and that is some of the best pickerel fishing in the state. It's some of the best mixed species fishing in the state. When you put a minnow in there, you don't know if a crappie is going to eat it, a pickerel is going to eat it, a largemouth bass is going to eat it, or a yellow perch is going to eat it. And guess what? Any of them might be really big. Oh, or a catfish. I forgot catfish. That area, once you get a few hundred yards up above that bridge, that water is just chock full of fish. Chock full of fish. That's
Cool.
a good one. I love going there.
We have some questions about St. Mary's Lake. And so David Hall asked about that. Eric Packard actually chimed in, and I'll put up his response, and I'll let you chime into his. So, how is St. Mary's State Park for winter fishing? I assume he's talking about.
That's the lake. That's the lake.
Okay, gotcha. Yep. Okay. So Eric Packard's a local resident down there, and he describes shoreline fishing as difficult, but the bait moves off into water from 14 to 20 plus feet. Most of the shoreline's 3 to 8 and extends a good distance out, but at the far end of the spillway, close to the dam, the water drops to 18 to 20. Now, I've done some winter fishing with you, Lenny. We did pretty good. That was the first time I think I met Eric Packard. We all caught that day.
That was on a boat, though.
Yes.
That was on a boat. We were able to get off the shoreline. From the shoreline, I 100% defer to Eric, because the truth of the matter is when I went to St. Mary's, when I was back in school there, that's when I used to go to St. Mary's Lake, like basically, to harvest dinner every night. I spent so much time at St. Mary's Lake that the college considered creating a new major in fishing at St. Mary's Lake. Kinda. No, really, we spent a ton of time there. But back then, they used to close the lake mid-December through April. Like the end of December, January, and February, the lake was not accessible. I never snuck in. Shh, no. So, we really didn't know how the fish there behaved. And it was different back then. They would draw down the lake. They would drain, like, I don't know, a third of it. And that's how they managed it. Now, they don't do that anymore. So Eric has a lot more current real-time experience there than I do. So I totally defer. I'm sure what he's saying is accurate, because he does go there all the time.
Very cool. We're just about 6 o'clock, but I did see one more question following back what we were talking about the boat license. I think I know the answer, but do you know if the boat license covers title and non-title?
Non-title. You have to chip in the extra $10, $15, whatever it is, to get the title Did I say non-tidal? I meant to say tidal.
Title.
The boat license covers tidal, right? And you have to chip in the extra, whatever it is, 10, 15 bucks to get the non-tidal. But you can do it all at the same time. And so, you get you get one piece of paper you can print out and put in your pocket, and that covers you for everything.
Right. Technically, it's called the Chesapeake Bay and Coastal Sport Boat License. So
Right.
it is title. You're correct.
Right. And then also, there's reciprocity with Virginia. So that covers you in Virginia waters if you cruise your boat south. And that also covers you at the coast. If you haul over to Ocean City or something like that, you kind of cover it everywhere. I don't know how you can own a boat and not get it. If you own a boat and you don't get it, I got a problem with you, actually. Something's wrong. Something's wrong.
Our friend Wayne, Fish Talk contributor, Chesapeake Bay Fishing Roofs, and adores store-bought shads. He ties his own shad darts using clouds or eyes on the hook to hold the hook upright for when fishing over rocks.
Oh, you just reminded me of something too. Where is somewhere around here? Here it is. So this is really interesting. This is a Tin Man Lures shad dart. And the really cool thing about these, I just discovered this. I just met Tin Man Guy a couple months ago, and look at how big this dart is, and look at that huge gap you got for the pickerel, right? But this is not lead. This is tin. It's like half the weight. It weighs like nothing. So now you can take your tiny little bobber or one of these guys, right? And you can fish the big profile bait with very, very little weight. So that the Tin Man Lures, you find them on eBay. Actually, he's got an eBay store, and that's a real change of the game kind of advantage right there, right? You can have literally half the weight with twice the size. So that's a neat one too.
So I'll just chime in here. If you're looking for,
you got a link for us?
I thought I did. I'll put it up later. I know he's on Facebook and you can find him there. So, but Tom Sybeck's Tin Man Lures.
If you Google Tin Man Lures, you find him. I mean, yeah. Woo! All right. I think we're hitting 6 o'clock. Do we have any more questions we should squeeze in here, or are we calling it a wrap?
Well, I'm sorry. I lied. If you go to fishtalkmag.com and you go to our classified section, you'll see our tackle box page, and you'll see all the local tackle box, and there's Tin Man Lures right there. You click on that link, and it will take you to his eBay store. And he's local. He's right I think just over the Pennsylvania line. So
Perfect.
He'll get to you in just a few days.
Perfect. So you can just go to Fish Talk Mag and go right on over through there. Nice. I like how you work, Zach. You managed to pull out all these little things so quick that nobody ever, I didn't know that. I didn't know that happened. I probably should have, but I didn't.
Oh, we got amped up Tommy Robinson here. He said he's doing the pickerel tournament with us, so that's a good crew up there, and they throw their own tournaments up there out of Pasadena. So check out ampedup.com. Thanks for tuning in, Tommy.
Nice. Hey, Tommy. I like it.
Last year, Lenny, I had what? 5 citations, and I was 12th place.
Oh, man.
So, I got a lot of good anglers in this year's pickerel tournament. And I know you and I haven't really got going, even though the CCA tournament began November 1st this year. A lot of guys have head start on us with some really good numbers up so far.
Yeah, I said I wasn't going to fish until December. And then December came. It just came, right? And honestly, the bite on the bay is just too good to turn away from. Now I'm thinking I might not fish for pickerel until mid-December. We'll have to see how long this, the action lasts on the bay. But you're right. The competition is stiff. I remember the first year that I did it, I think there were like 28 people in it, something like that. And last year it was like 80, and this year it's like 60.
Yeah, it's pretty big. Yeah, during 2020, it was definitely a popular thing because people needed stuff to do.
Yeah.
And I'm glad a lot of those people came back.
You know what's really cool? What's really cool is that as the field has expanded, what CCA has done is like, it's not like they pocket the extra entry money. They get more prizes. So originally there were like 3 prizes. Now I don't know how many. There's got to be like 30. I mean, there are all these, like, there are lots of winners. They draw prizes. They drew prizes last night. I want a little pair of snippers.
You got the boomerang, huh? Who turned you onto those boomerangs anyway?
You
my
did.
dad got them. I got them everywhere.
But they got all these prizes that are just like flat. Like he gave away, he did 3 random drawings, gave away an Engel cooler for the current leader, right? 1 month in.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what else, but it's really cool because even though there's more competition, there's like all these new ways to win. It's very awesome.
It is. And I think there's some other tournaments going on this winter, so check the Fish Talk calendar for that. I believe this Saturday is the High Octane Custom Baits West Side Pickerel Tournament. That's also catch and release, so you can concurrently fish the CCA Pickerel Tournament and that tournament too. And so, you know, that's the cool thing about these catch and release tournaments. So you can often fish multiple tournaments. But, well, I hope I get out on that Glacier Bay at least one more time. There was a guy that chimed in earlier, so he thought he saw it up at Pasadena Boat Works, but that couldn't have been right. You didn't have it in for certain.
Not currently.
But they did do a lot of the refit on the Glacier Bay, right?
They did a huge amount of the refit in 2019. Yeah. They replaced all the wiring, all the pumps, you know, all the switches, all the panels. They did a pretty major rebuild over there. Put on a new rub rail, put on hydraulic steering, goes on and on and on. They did a monster part of the work, but it hasn't been back there since then.
Gotcha. Well, I hope you enjoy those twin 90s on that Glacier Bay while you still have it. I hope I get out with you at least one more time. I had a lot of great times on that boat, and I'm sure the next boat is going to have at least one Suzuki, if not multiple Suzukis on the back. So look forward to seeing what's next for you, and I'm excited for your new adventures.
Considering my experiences, you're probably right.
Well, we just want to say thanks again to Suzuki for sponsoring this episode of Live with Lenny, and hope everyone has a safe and happy holidays and gets out there and does some wintertime fishing, right? And
absolutely.
If we didn't get any of these questions, if we missed any, we'll try to put them back in the comments, and we hope to see everyone on January 6th. Thanks so much.